Joining me now, senior advisor to the McCain campaign, NICHOLLE WALLACE. Good to see you here in person.
Thank you for having me.
So here we are, final week, closing argument. What is it that Senator McCain wants voters to be thinking about in this week and on Election Day?
You know, I thought Governor Pawlenty summed it up pretty well. There are a lot of people who have seen these candidates over the last 2 years, really, who have strong opinions, but there is a big chunk of the American public who's tuning in for these final days to make a final decision. And they're tuning in the midst of an economic crisis, and they've got probably the most vast difference between opinion and the way these two men see the economy. On the one side, you have Obama, who seems to be running as redistributor of wealth in chief. And on the other side, you have John McCain, who is running on a platform of growing the economy, of a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think people will tune in and make a choice based on that difference. And the other thing that I think Joe Biden really brought into sharp focus for all of us is his belief that Barack Obama would be tested by the world or by America's enemies. So I think we're having a closing argument about experience and about growth versus redistribution of wealth that will set up John McCain very well going into the final days and hours of this race.
And yet in the final days, there is also this, as reported by the Politico.com website. A close Palin ally outside the campaign who speaks regularly to the candidate tells Politico her strategy was to be trustworthy and a team player during the convention and thereafter, but she felt completely mismanaged and mishandled and ill-advised. Recently, she's gone from relying on McCain advisors who were assigned to her to relying on her own instincts. Palin's loyalists say she has grown particularly disenchanted with the veterans of the Bush re-election campaign, including Steve Schmidt and NICHOLLE WALLACE. Wallace declined to engage publicly in the finger-pointing that has consumed the campaign. The article goes on to say in the final weeks, quoting you as saying, "I am in awe of Palin's strength under constant fire by the media." She said in an email, "If someone wants to throw me under the bus, my personal belief is that the most graceful thing to do is lie there." Acrimony, distraction, discussion of clothes for her on the campaign trail. This has got to be fighting your message here in the final week.
Well, listen, this is not something that anyone living in Ohio or living in Florida or living in Michigan or living in Nevada or Colorado gives one single hoot about. You know, this is, Washington clamoring and clanging, and it is a real disservice, I think, to the honorable campaign that Senator McCain has run, to the absolute, vitality of Sarah Palin. The notion that Sarah Palin asserting herself is something that we don't, celebrate and embrace and welcome. She and John McCain are two peas in a pod when it comes to bucking not just, the script, but to political convention. And I think that's what people are looking for in Washington.
But is Senator McCain upset that infighting within the campaign has spilled out now publicly?
Well, look, everyone wants to keep the voters' focus on the big choice in this election. So certainly, in as much as the media is riveted by stories of personalities, I can promise you, I've done this long enough, no one cares at all about campaign staff except campaign staff. What voters care about is what are you going to do to make things better? How are you going to turn Washington upside down? We had a sad reminder today of just how, I think, deep the corruption and the way Washington and Washingtonians and people in the Congress and the Senate lost their way. So, I think that people are looking for change, and I think the two people best equipped to shaking things up and turning Washington upside down are John McCain and Sarah Palin.
But she's gotten a lot of attention, and it's not the attention that the McCain campaign wanted. Certainly she's energizing the base. That has kept on. But in terms of being a drag on the ticket, in the polls show she's a bigger drag than President Bush, according to our poll. And also the question of her qualifications. Her own hometown newspaper, the Anchorage Daily News, a paper that would know her well, having covered her as governor, wrote this in endorsing Obama. Despite Governor Palin's formidable gifts, few who have worked closely with the governor would argue she is truly ready to assume command of the most important, powerful nation on earth, to step in and juggle the demands of an economic meltdown. 2 deadly wars and a deteriorating climate crisis would stretch the governor beyond her range. Like picking Senator McCain for president, putting her 72-year-old heartbeat from the leadership of the free world is just too risky at this time.
Well, look, the voters are going to make their choice. And I think in a week they're going to look at one ticket, which, certainly at the top of the ticket, you have the most liberal person ever to be nominated by the Democratic Party. And you have a running mate who is guaranteeing America and Americans that President Obama, if he should win, will be tested by the world. And that is certainly on the menu. If someone wants their wealth to be redistributed, if they believe success should be taken from those who achieve the American dream and handed out to others, that is on the menu. On the other side,
they would point out that he's also going to tax. Part of his plan is to reduce taxes for 95% of those paying. So he does raise them on the top earners, but he also is cutting them. But
listen, David, even that has been revealed to be not exactly what Barack Obama describes it as. To say you're going to give 95% of Americans tax relief, only 60% of those people pay taxes. So for 40% of the public, it's a redistribution of success, a redistribution of wealth. But again, on the other side, you have John McCain, one of the most experienced voices and leaders in our nation's foreign policy. He was right about the way to win the war in Iraq. He's been right about every major foreign policy. He's worked with Democrats. He's reached across the aisle, and he has led. And on that ticket, Sarah Palin is somebody who has reform in her DNA. She is someone who has taken on the entrenched interests. She's actually done something to help America achieve energy independence, and she has walked the walk when it comes to reforming and taking on and tackling entrenched interests. So it depends what people want. Do they want a redistribution of wealth? Do they want the least experienced president in America's history at a time of extraordinary challenge? Or do they want the McCain-Palin ticket of reformers and experience?
Winning presidential tickets don't have stories about political infighting within the campaign. You're an accomplished veteran of the Bush campaigns and a public servant in the Bush administration. These kinds of stories about disagreements within the campaign certainly didn't spill out in the course of the campaign itself. This was what Robert Draper wrote, who is a biographer of the Bush administration, about John McCain's approach, Senator McCain's approach, and this campaign's approach in this particular cycle. He writes this: John McCain's biography has been the stuff of legend for nearly a decade, and yet Steve Schmidt, and his fellow strategists have had difficulty explaining how America will be better off for electing as opposed to simply admiring a stubborn patriot. In seeking to do so, the McCain campaign has changed its narrative over and over. A candidate who is variously a fighter, a conciliator, an experienced leader, and a shake-em-up rebel. You say that people in Ohio and Nevada don't care a whit about any of these things, but this infighting, this lack of agreement affects the candidate that they're seeing.
Well, listen, I came of age watching and admiring the Clinton administration, and I read more riveting books about infighting in the Clinton administration. I think 67% of the American people approved of the job he did at the time and afterward. So, I disagree that there can't be vigorous and robust debate that sometimes spills out into the public for someone to be successful and certainly for someone to win. But I would say specifically about campaign tactics, the times have changed. Things have adapted to the times. We certainly came out of our convention with a strong message about growing this economy, about winning these wars, and then we faced and we embraced the challenge of a global economic meltdown. So we are certainly proud that we work for the candidate who was on the ground, in the arena, engaged, and maybe not making the stuff that great campaign speeches are made out of or sound bites, but he was on the ground in the fight, trying to manage our government and our country through one of the greatest economic crises that we've seen since the Great Depression. And the other choice, again, people have a choice. It doesn't matter in these final days what you and I think. In 7-8 days, people will make their own choice for president. And the choice there is between a cool cucumber who sat on the sidelines, took some polls, took the temperature, and waited for events to kind of gel. Our candidate was in the mix. He was in the ring and he was fighting. And I am very proud to work for someone who lets the political chips fall where they may. And if I can, that is the choice here. There is someone who, much to the chagrin of advisors like me, who, when it's all over, we are meaningless. People choose. They can see through all this. They see through the ads. In Obama's case, they see through 10 times the ads that we've had on the air. People see through all that, and they choose a leader.
Final point here. Obviously, Senator McCain and you have made the argument that the polls are tightening. He fully expects to make this close and to pull out victory. So we don't know what's going to happen. But has Senator McCain thought at all about what he might do if he does not prevail in this campaign to work with Senator Obama in an Obama administration?
Well, look, I don't think that anyone contemplates anything other than a victory on Election Day. But if you look back at the record, it is John McCain who has reached across the aisle. One of his closest friends in the Senate is Joe Lieberman. It is John McCain who made history in passing bipartisan reforms to campaign finance. It is John McCain who has worked with Democrats to solve our global climate problems. It is John McCain who built a coalition to really help us see through the Iraq War to a better place than it had been under Secretary Rumsfeld. So John McCain has a long record of reaching across the aisle, and it's Barack Obama who hasn't always reached back.
Has Obama surprised McCain?
I don't know if he's surprised him, but, you know, I think that we scratch our heads sometimes when Barack Obama comes out with a new economic policy. You know, the heat's on and he adds some tax reductions that he thinks polls well. You know, he tells Joe the plumber that, yes, I'm going to redistribute wealth, and he sees that the public doesn't react very well to that, so he pivots a little bit further. So I think we're stunned by how his rhetoric, you know, very, very on a daily basis seems to diverge farther and farther from his record. But I think John McCain's been doing this long enough that nothing surprises him.
All right, Nichole Wallace, thank you very much, Nichole.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.